In Eugene O'Neill's iconic play, Long Day's Journey into Night, the character of James Tyrone, a retired actor based on O'Neill's own father, struggles with the weight of his past. His success in one role defines him, and while it made him a lot of money, he laments the way it prevented him from being taken seriously in the wide range of roles he got into acting hoping to play, but which he now can never be taken seriously for because audiences have forever associated him with that one to which he owed his fame. Hello, and welcome to our countdown of the top 10 actors who fell into what we'll be calling the James Tyrone Trap. These actors, like Tyrone, were pigeonholed by their success in one role, making it difficult for them to break out and be taken seriously in other roles. But before we start our countdown, if you're an actor or a lover of the performing arts, please consider liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any other content, analyzing great theatrical works, and sharing some of my own. And now, without further ado, let's dive into our list of the top 10 actors who fell into the James Tyrone Trap. First off, we have Jim Carrey, whose first leading film role of Ace Ventura, with its extremely over-the-top physical comedy, made it hard for critics to take him seriously in serious dramatic roles. Now, one reason Carrey doesn't rank a lot higher on this list is because he actually has succeeded in being cast in such dramatic roles, although definitely not receiving the recognition he deserves. It's very revealing that when The Truman Show came out, Siskel and Ebert actually apologized to Carrey on the air for announcing that he'd never be able to be taken seriously in dramatic roles. And despite the commercial success of The Truman Show, his failure to receive an Oscar nomination for his performance is widely considered one of the biggest Oscar snubs of all time. And it's hard to argue that the reputation he'd set for himself with Ace Ventura wasn't a major factor in that decision. Despite Siskel and Ebert's retraction, Carrey has never to date been nominated for an Oscar, and their earlier reviews very likely account for that. Next, we have Tom Selleck, someone else who doesn't rank higher on this list because he actually has had a very successful career since Magnum P.I. went off the air. But there's no denying his film career could have gone in different directions had he been cast as Indiana Jones, a role that he was the first choice for, but could not accept due to his contract with that show. Now, I don't think I'm alone among fans of Indiana Jones in being grateful that he was unable to do it so that Harrison Ford could step in, but from Selleck's perspective, it's definitely a case of one role interfering with his ability to play another that he probably would have preferred. Next, we have Elizabeth Berkley, whose disastrous feature film debut in Showgirls undoubtedly harmed her future career prospects. Now, Berkley's performance regularly makes it onto other top 10 lists on YouTube videos and film blogs of the worst performances of all time, and I don't think that's fair. I mean, yeah, these critics can point out her line reading for different places, but still, you're kidding yourself if you think that she is the reason this movie was bad. If she or her agent are to be blamed for anything, it would be the bad decision to accept such a role. But it's hard not to see that decision through the lens of the one big role she had been associated with prior to that film, the class president and 4.0 student in Saved by the Bell. Showgirls might have been a flop that was a flop for her career as well, but taking on a role representing the opposite extreme of the good girl she was already associated with was clearly her unsuccessful attempt to break free from the James Tyrone trap she'd been caught in by the end of Saved by the Bell's run. With Christina Applegate, we have another victim who, like Selleck, probably regrets not being able to play the lead in a huge blockbuster. But unlike Selleck, she actually was free to take the role of Elle Woods in Legally Blonde and turned it down. Haunted by the James Tyrone trap she'd begun to build for herself with her iconic role of Kelly Bundy, she didn't want to continue to be pigeonholed as the dumb blonde for casting purposes. For Berkeley, breaking free from her James Tyrone role meant taking a role that she probably shouldn't have. But for Applegate, it meant turning one down that she probably should have accepted. As somebody who loves Star Wars as much as I do, it's hard to forgive Sir Alec Guinness for how much he always hated the movies and his role as Obi-Wan that he took only for the money and came to regret it. As a dramatist who loves the works of Shakespeare and Star Wars, I don't see why one has to be the enemy of the other, as Guinness did, but given the extreme success he'd had playing the great classical Shakespearean roles on stage, I can see why he, in his later years, would not like that his legacy was always going to be marked by that one role he would always be remembered for. Before we go on to number 5, I need to say a few words about television. Since the invention of film, it's the long-running television series that has definitely taken the place of the successful play that tours all over the nation, like the one Tyrone starred in. And if a popular show stays on the air for a long time, it's easy to see how the star can fall into Tyrone's trap when he or she plays that one role in so many episodes. So there are a lot of iconic television characters I could include here whom you might be surprised that I haven't included on this list. But in picking and choosing, I had to take into account the old maxim we actors have that TV makes you rich, movies make you famous, and theater makes you good. And for many actors, that's fine. The fact that Dennis Franz, for example, doesn't have a single IMDb credit for after NYPD Blue went off the air, that clearly indicates that he made so much money during its run that he's never going to have to work again, and he's obviously happy with that, even though the same could not be said of James Tyrone. So, of the many TV stars that could complain like Tyrone did, I'm not including the many that haven't. And with our number 5, Peter Falk may not have actually complained about his association with his iconic role as Detective Columbo, and did continue to be cast in other films for the rest of his long career. His recognition as a great film actor still was just never the same after taking on that role. In the early 60s, he received back-to-back Oscar nominations. Then he became Columbo in 1971, and continued making films until 2009 without ever again being recognized by Academy voters for his work. This next one pretty much speaks for itself. Can anybody out there name one other role they associate Leonard Nimoy with than Spock? And in case you think that he, like Dennis Franz and others, didn't mind this fact due to how much money the role made him, just take a look at the title of his 1975 autobiography to let you know how much he minded. I've seen Chris Owen, the Shermanator of American Pie, appear on other countdown lists of famous people who now work totally ordinary jobs, and I think including him on those lists is a misclassification. In lists full of people who chose to walk away from fame and live an ordinary life, That is clearly not the case for this actor, who's working a regular job is clearly not a case of that, but a case of a guy who, like any other struggling actor, has to have a day job. And his need to keep his day job, despite his major success with that 1999 blockbuster, is undoubtedly the case of the way that one role pigeonholed his type as an actor. Heck, the same year he even had a small role in playing the same a-hole teen character, bullying Kieran Culkin. Now, playing a character who's a real a-hole shouldn't necessarily be poisonous to an actor's career, as many actors who get cast as a-hole characters go on to have illustrious careers, always playing a-holes. But there's something unique about just the kind of a-holes you deal with in high school. There's no kind of a-hole quite like the teenaged a-hole, and when you consider that, it's easy to see why a guy who's associated with roles like his is having a hard time finding his castable Hollywood type now that he's no longer a teenager. Walt Disney paid Adriana Caselotti a total of $970 to be the voice of Snow White, and for that whopping sum, he claimed the right to own her voice in perpetuity, to the obvious detriment of her career. While her voice was so distinct and recognizable that nobody could hear her speak without hearing Snow White, even people in show business who were able to get past that to offer her work would be blocked by Disney and his contracts. Jack Benny once asked Walt Disney for permission to use her on his radio show and was told, quote, "I'm sorry, but that voice can't be used anywhere. I don't want to spoil the illusion of Snow White," unquote. All that for $970 and a role for which she didn't even receive a screen credit. Amazing. Taking the #1 spot is George Reeves. Reeves, no relation to the man who ironically would play Superman in the movies, played the role on television in the 1950s. Recall how we started this list with people who continue to have careers, just arguably not as good as they could have been had it not been for their one James Tyrone role, and I'm sure you've noticed that we've moved along to actors whose limitations became a lot sadder and more tragic. And it's hard to beat the tragedy here. Reeves acted in 2 Best Picture Oscar winners, but we only see him in one, Gone with the Wind. His second, From Here to Eternity, saw his entire part end up on the cutting room floor, expressly because test audiences who saw screenings of early cuts of the film saw him and immediately thought, "Oh, hey, there's Superman." And that didn't fit with the tone of the movie that they were going for. After this, his career would spiral downwards until he would ultimately die by suicide in 1959 at the age of 45. So, actors, in the end, it's not enough to be great in one role. True success comes from pushing boundaries, taking risks, and embracing the unknown. Hopefully, these actors can inspire us all to break free from our own personal James Tyrone traps. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more performing arts related content here on my channel. And I'll see you next time.